Welcome to our podcast. Join hosts Caitlin, Kristen, and Stephanie for candid chats on life, relationships, relocating, and real estate. From navigating change to sharing tips, we've got you covered. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real Salty Podcast. I'm Caitlin and I'm here today with Stephanie. What's up, girl? So for today's episode, we're going to be switching gears a little bit. In the last few episodes that you've seen us record, first of all, have to give a shout out to our missing Three Musketeer here, Kristen, who apparently just travels the country now for a living because she's that cool. She is traveling today and without reliable internet. So we are going to be taking care of today's episode and we'll look forward to seeing her back next week. But as I was saying, for today's episode, we also want to switch gears a little bit in another way. The last few episodes that we've recorded, we've given you guys quite a little insight into who we are, where we've come from, how we got to Florida. But we've also mentioned multiple times at this point that we are all real estate agents. So with that being said, today's topic, we wanted to focus and really laser in on a topic within real estate. So today we're going to be talking about condominiums. Now, condominiums or condos, you might hear them referred to, it might be something that you're fully aware of and what the rights of the ownership include and those pesky HOA fees that you have to pay every month or go to the board meetings and all the fun things. But for other places, like for example in Missouri, and I know that Stephanie discussed where she was at in Illinois, condominiums are not a normal term that you hear in real estate. Apartments, yes, but the difference between an apartment and a condominium is dramatic. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and bounce it over to Stephanie, and she's going to lead us in with some pretty hefty statistics of how serious we take our condominiums here in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, that's just exactly it. I go visit back north, and what would be condos in Florida are still apartments up north. And I really think that it attributes to just the density that we have or lack of density that we have. And what
Yeah.
would be a hotel is now individual condos now. And there's some enormous benefits by that, from an absentee owner or just even from, living there. Or there's a ton of benefits, but there is over 1.5 million condos in the state of Florida, which is just insane. California and Florida own the market when it comes to condos. It makes up almost 40% of the entire population maybe not being the right word, but the entire demographic of all condos in the whole country. So
It's like 40% of the housing type. That is
crazy.
huge.
It's just crazy, right? Like
Huge.
it's just crazy. And so it's an enormous business for us to be involved in, as well as it gives people an opportunity to be an absentee owner or be a retiree without having to worry about the general maintenance, because one of the things that you learn when you live up north to moving down south, nothing dies down here. And you're constantly, yard work is a must. It's got to be done like weekly, and there is bi-weekly cleanups, and that's at bare minimum. So the condominiums are an enormous asset for Florida in general. And then you get into the 55 and plus condo area, and that's just a fantastic environment to be in as well. And there's a ton of them in the area, and I mean that's what Florida was always known for, right? Is its retirees.
True.
And only because then they'd only give up so much of their life to be snowbirds and to come down here. And so, but in they say in Florida right now that we're undergoing a really healthy rebalance because of the high interest rates and the greater amount of homes of spending that's going on. And there's more days on the market that you might have your condo on the market for than in the past. But let's face it, the last couple of years, when we all thought, the world was going to end, what did everyone want to do? I mean, we're talking international. everyone wanted
True.
just to move to Florida.
Right.
That's what they said. We're just, who cares about anything else anymore? We just want to move to Florida. We want to live somewhere else.
Carpe diem, seize the day. Yeah.
I mean, it really was. It was like, how much money can I take out, and how much money can I put right in? Let's do this. And so,
Well, and let's also not forget about the corporations that told everyone you can work from anywhere. And
yeah,
now
a
they're
super valid point. Super
takes you back
valid.
to, yeah, takes you
Super
back.
valid point. Yeah. And so, but with that, then we had a really tragic event down in Miami happen
Yeah.
where the structural issue, and everyone remembers Surfside just collapsing completely, right? Right underneath people's feet, and whether or not it was because of a pool situation or a crack or whatever. Florida in general is, our little area that we're in is a sandbar, but Florida in general is a sandbar. And when you go to baseball fields in Florida, it's not dirt, it's sand. When you go in the
Right.
middle of Florida, it's sand that you're dealing with. And so everything is built on a sandbar essentially. So there was all these laws that were put into place this year to help protect
Right.
owners, but they were put in the law fast. And we've all been a part of HOAs before, whether it's been, you know, someone, you are part of one, or you, in our case, we've sold or helped a buyer or seller with them. They've always been happy about, we didn't have to raise our HOA fees, but there were a lot of things that needed to be insured all the time. Structural damage, to make sure that the structural integrity and the engineering is okay, the roof is okay, and the elevators are working properly. So all these laws were passed that were effective January 1st, 2024, and then you add in an incredibly competitive market years, the last couple of years. So it's made our condo business, it's not, you can't even use the word sluggish. I mean, it's sluggish when you compare it to the last couple of years, but it's literally normal. It's just
Yeah.
like right sizing that normality again and putting it to a place of just normal. But the good thing about it is that you can buy a condo knowing that, the safety is there, the financial transparency is there, and there's actually like what they call a governance of condos,
Right.
because not only do you have to disclose all of that during the contract period, but you have to sign off that you got it disclosed to you. I mean, we just have to protect. We have to protect this consumer from purchasing, as well as the owner from potentially being sued because
Right.
they actually didn't know. I mean, I don't know how many owners I've worked with. They actually just didn't even know what was going on because they're absentee or they're snowbirds, and yeah, they get the emails, but they don't pay attention, and they're just
Well, and I mean, how often as an agent, I mean, I don't know about you, but it's shocking to me how many associations I've asked for the past 12 months of monthly meeting minutes. And they're like, we have three.
yeah, and that's probably actually how many times they met.
And if they only have to meet quarterly and they take care of what they have to take care of, good on ya. But it
Yeah,
is abnormal to me when I notice a lack of meeting minutes.
yep. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And that's usually disclosed at the beginning of the meeting minutes too. Like, we did not meet this month because of,
Right.
we did not meet. This has not happened. But I mean, Michael, my husband and I were in a condo association when we first bought, and we bought because it's cheaper than renting. You should
Right.
always buy because it's a little bit cheaper than renting. And we bought that, and it was self managed, so it didn't have a company helping it, and there were no laws, and we had
And
all these,
Bob and Jane Dickerson have lived there for 30 years and they run this mother. No, I'm just
and
kidding.
we're happy as owners that someone takes it on, right?
Right, right, right. I mean, we don't want to do it, but like, yeah, right,
Yeah, like hopefully someone steps forward and does it, and this is a big undertaking, and it really is. It's been volunteer for so
right.
long.
It's very true. Very true.
It's been volunteer, and so you almost can't fault. the volunteers out of this whole thing. But at the same time, the laws move so fast. They moved
Right.
so fast from the time of disaster, essentially, to where we're at now. And then you encompass that with the real estate normalizing. It's been a go the last couple of months. There's skepticism out there.
Well,
There's
yeah. So with everything that Stephanie's been talking about, I just kind of want to break it down because this is a normal conversation for us in the industry in which we work. But ultimately, because of that tragic, unnecessary loss of life at the
yeah,
Surfside condominium collapse in Miami, um, legislation was passed through the state. Now,
yes,
these milestone inspections are actually a two-part. So, what Stephanie was also talking about not only includes the engineering report, which we could talk about the fact that there's not enough engineers in the state to get it done in less than a year and a half timely manner. So, these milestone inspections have been being performed since last year, and they have until December 31st of this year to finish. Whether or not they will, we shall see, but it'll be no one's technical fault. There's only a certain amount of approved engineers to do this kind of work
yes,
in
being
the state.
certified, right,
So with
right.
the amount of condominiums that we have that have to be performed, it's understandable that a timeline has to be given. Now, that actually can go from two very important phases. The initial phase one, if everything goes according to plan, you do not move forward with the more in depth phase two. Now, if things are found during phase one, then the engineer has to move into phase two. Now, one would think, well, just to be safe, why aren't we just doing phase two? There have to be symptoms, okay? There has to be
Yeah,
symptoms of the notable structural things that that engineer is checking that would alarm to him that there might be something underlying. Now, they are very, again, specific, trained, skill set people to recognize these things. God forbid your place of living has to go to phase two, yeah, you better buckle
yeah,
up,
yeah,
Buttercup.
yeah. It's
You
not.
know,
Yeah, it's not good.
we're talking assessment time. However, there's been special assessments and also just general increases in monthly fees because of the results of phase one.
Yeah,
Ultimately, usually it can be taken care of. I want to say, in my personal opinion, more often than not, it seems to be it can be taken care of in a singular special
yeah.
assessment.
I think that we hear about, just like in
Yes,
typical media, we hear about the exceptions and not really what we're finding the
right,
rule. But it's also important to note that so what makes it so they have to go through this criteria, and they have to
right.
be like before 1990 they have to be built, so you don't have to worry
Oh
about
yeah,
everything. Is you don't have to worry about it. New builds are, you don't have to worry about that piece right now with all of the new builds that are out there, which Caitlin and I can talk to you all day long about the amazing
the
amazing
benefits.
new builds
Yes.
and fantastic new builds that we have in the area that are modernized as well as protected, and they're done at like here it's a normal grade for us. But if you were to take a structure like we're building, whether it's Harbor, the residences, or the Beachmaker that's coming up, or even Capri, like just, or Madeira Beach one, whatever one you
Right.
want to call it, is they're at a commercial build. If you put it anywhere,
Well,
they're labeled commercial, but you will never see a more solid structure anywhere in the
right.
country.
Well, and we know a lot more too as a society regarding what is necessary for structures to go through, what it has to go through with the proximity to the coast and the weather and the flooding and the everything else. I mean, at
Yes.
this point, FEMA, we got to be 13 feet off the ground. There's
Yes.
no living dwellings that are on the ground floor level
Yeah.
just in
Yeah.
case of a storm surge.
Yeah.
So you talk about the material that's necessary, you talk about being completely up to date with code and safety and everything like that. But Stephanie, to bring it back to what you were originally saying though, she's absolutely right. This is mandated only for a certain age of building
Yeah.
or a certain height of building,
Yeah.
or I should be saying and or
Yeah.
versus just or, and or proximity distance to the coast. Because another factor that you don't think of from the Midwest is what salt water air can actually do to a structure,
Yeah.
including all components, concrete, metal, everything. Okay. It literally is like my brain processes it that salt air and the exposure to the salt, just literally corrosion, misses Pac-Man's its way
Yeah.
through
Yep.
concrete,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
gets into the rebar. Next thing you know, we got problems.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of factors to that. Now, it's important to also mention that these milestone inspections are going to have to be performed every decade, right? So the new construction now is not applicable to have these, or it's not necessary to have these done. But in 10 years from now, a lot of them, because of the height of the building and the proximity to the coast, they will have to have it done. And this is just to ensure, again, that nothing like the Surfside ever happens again.
Yeah, and from a buyer's perspective, and or even just a seller's perspective, there's there you know oh, the HOA, oh, the HOA. But there's no one fighting harder for the HOAs than the people that are currently residing there. So
True.
rest assured that they're making sure, as well as the management companies, and a lot of them have turned them over to management companies because the job is just too big at this point.
The overhead,
It's
right?
oh, right. That it's too the liability behind
The
it
liability of it all.
is
You're
just too
absolutely right.
big. And so
Yeah.
there's no one fighting harder. I mean, I can give countless examples of people that are, the assessments have been large, but all of this will subside and all of this will, it's all good stuff. It's all good to protect your investment. Kayla and I have countless stories of people that
Right.
all of a sudden, like, yeah, okay, so maybe they didn't fall apart like the one that happened in Miami, but they got condemned and then everyone had to move out and they all got 100,000 for waterfront and that's all they got as a condition just to help them and that it's just crazy. So we do find that there's a hesitation and that's okay. You should do your homework
Yes.
before you buy something. And that because of the last couple of years and because people were throwing their savings into like the carpe diem that you're talking about, like they didn't they were in too much of a bidding war to do their homework. But
True.
now if all of that stuff doesn't make sense, whether it's the meeting minutes, whether it's the governance, or whether it's the special assessment, or whether it's all of the things that are incorporated, that's where we come in or our legal team comes in to make sure that there's nothing that can happen. Now, I just closed on a condo not too long ago that it's a hotel condo. So that means in the state of Florida that you can live there for 90 days of the year, and the rest of the time you have to rent it out. It's an
Right.
awesome option, especially for snowbirds. You stay there during the winter, and then you can rent it out during spring break, all the way through all the way through until you want to reside in it again. You have a management company that takes care of everything for you. It's a fantastic option. We got all the way to a week before and the estoppel certificate came back and they said, "Oh, it's under litigation." And my owners had no idea. They literally had no idea. And they remember saying something about it, but they weren't sure. But all we had to do, and it doesn't mean the deal goes south. It just means like, okay, let's pull up the covers and see what's going on underneath. And sometimes it's incredibly preventive to protect the sellers. Sometimes it's not preventive and it's a disaster. But that is why, like, it's so important. You have to connect with someone that is going to do that work for you so that it's one of the largest purchases you're going to make, whether it's
Right.
as an absentee owner or as your primary residence. It's one of the largest purchases you're going to make of your life. Just connect with someone that will walk you through it. But I assure you, like, all of those things that have been put in place, we were all like, "What?" Because it was just doing real estate different for us. But I mean, I I don't know about you, but I feel more confident now when I'm listing a property that I'm disclosing everything and I'm not, there's nothing that I
Well,
don't know about either.
right, right. And again, our fiduciary responsibility, that's very important. And for the liability of everything, like you were saying, not only for the rights of the owner, but us as the listing agent, you're also talking about for the future of that association. One important part that I want to make sure to mention before we keep going is that along with the engineering report, there is a reserve study. So when you talk about the
Yeah.
funding of basically making sure that we can afford to keep our building or buildings structurally sound. I mean, one can plan on what a new roof on a condominium building, let's just say even a 20 to 49 unit building, we could plan on needing a new roof, right?
Right.
Traditionally every 20 years, right? For switching insurance companies, it might have to be sooner than that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but with that being said, that means that we have to make sure that we have the reserves in place to afford said roof every what we would consider to be a normal type of turnaround for needing such structural repair
And
or
actually get real
renovation.
quotes and get real
Yes.
quotes
Well,
that are going to pull back to an accuracy.
so the other thing is with some of these associations too that had touted for years their low monthly fees, this has affected the
Yeah.
fact that when these major systems or these major pieces that had to be done for the community had to come down to brass tacks, there wasn't going to be enough money in the reserves. So that is almost kind of insinuating that we're going to, well, we'll just deal with it when it comes up. Well, a lot
Easily.
of people don't live their lives where they can incur that type of major expense or that type of major passage of the special assessment that they have to pay $13,000 in 3 months, and it's a 3 month payment. Pay it or buck up or shut up. You
Yeah.
know, they just can't do that. That's not something that, maybe the regular Jane and Joe Smith can budget into their account. So when it works well for the people that can make it happen, then that's great. And you guys get to tout your low monthly fees. But when you have people that have to consider that or budget in, and like I said, would function better or more financially responsibly for their own life by just paying a little bit more per month to make sure that that would be something that would be covered as a community in whole, it makes all the difference.
It
And plus,
does.
like you said, shout out to the board members. They are volunteers. It is almost like public office, a thankless job. Somebody's got to do it.
It
It
is.
is majorly being turned over to, like you mentioned, the management or management companies that are just able to give it that extra touch of professionalism and coordination and organization. But at
And
the same time,
most of
too,
them have people
raising
focused
right
on board.
raising monthly fees is about as popular as raising taxes.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Right.
not. It's not. So when
Right.
you have Betty Smith that's lived in the building for 30 years and she's been retired and she's donated her time to be on the board and ran all the monthly luau's and everything, when she brings up the fact, excuse me, we might want to consider whatever, they're like, oh, Betty, you're cute. But anyway, next week we'll talk about the barbecue.
Yep.
Again, I'm making assumptions. I'm profiling, which I'm not supposed to do. But the
Yeah.
point is that there's the structural and then there's the reserve study of it. So those are two of the that's it. And unfortunately though, when we're talking about the transparency factor of it, yes, 100% beneficial to the consumer when you think of it from a buying side. However, let's talk about it from the other side because you have people that have invested in properties, whether or not it was during crazy times of carpe diem of COVID or even before then. And now they have found themselves in ownership of a property that seems to be in an unstable condition
Yeah.
because of these inspections essentially that
Yeah.
have to be done. And now they're left holding the bill.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And they took their whole
They
life
need
savings
help.
and said, real estate is where I need to go.
Right, right, right.
And and it and it not everyone can be a landlord. It's not easy being a landlord. I mean, that's not an easy feast at all. And so it is. It's and we because of the amount of condos that we have in this area, we have absentee owners, we have snowbirds, and we have
Right.
people that live there full time. And
Right.
so you have got all different people that are have it for a different reason or inherited, and
Right.
they just want to keep it in the family. I mean, I have one that I'm working with right now. It's been in their family since 1992, and they they don't even come down here right now, and so they want to they have it listed, and I understand it's just not the right move for their family, and they thought it might be, and that's not what they want to do, and so but they had they didn't even know. I don't even think they would know that it was going on if they hadn't decided to list it. It's only because
Yeah.
they're, paying their monthly dues to help with it. But I mean, condo associations aren't offering nothing anymore either. They're figuring out ways so that the people that are spending more money, and it's not just because of like Surfside, it's because the flood insurance has gone up
Oh
or
yeah.
regular insurance has gone up. I mean, when Irma hit it, hit everyone. It hit everyone across the nation. If you don't think it didn't hit everyone across the nation in your pockets, you're wrong. Like
Yeah.
it changed the rules of FEMA for us too.
Oh yeah.
Changed it, and it's that whole like nothing changes until something happens, right? It's like that's just life. Like until something happens bad, unfortunately rules and laws don't get put in place. It's the way it is, and
True.
whether it's good or bad. But I just think in general it's not anything to shy away from. It's just
No.
understanding.
Understanding exactly, and working with a knowledgeable agent that knows to go after this information for you to be able to make that knowledgeable decision
Yeah.
with the information.
Yep.
You brought up one of your past deals here recently regarding that condominium hotel situation. I recently had a closing this year. Well, I guess a couple months at this point. It was in April. Buyer friends, which I now am proud to call friends,
Oh,
and
they just
but
become that way, right?
they
They do.
they're awesome. So
I
love
just
them
love
so
that.
much.
It's one of the best things about working with people. I think is how much like
Yeah,
you get to know them, and
yeah.
you want to keep it professional, but at the same time, it's like, and you most of the time deal with two different types at the same time, right? Like it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, they're the compassionate ones, but they're the business
So
one.
it was over, I'm going to be honest with it. Let me give a little backstory with this. It was over a year and a half since I had originally met these people, and they were down here on vacation. And I met them at the John's Pass Seafood Festival, which happens every January, right? And it was funny because it was through a mutual friend of mine who they were staying on the street where my friend lives, and he made a comment. And the next thing you know, introductions are being made. Anyway, long story short, but we looked for quite a long time. They knew what their particular situation was going to be when they were going to be ready. Ultimately, it was going to be a part of a 1031 exchange. They were looking for a property that ultimately was going to immediately be an income property, right? So we're talking about along the beaches. We're talking about with amenities that would be attractive to people that would want to spend their vacation money to go to.
And a
Um,
1031 exchange is like an enormous tax benefit to do that
Correct.
for people
You
that are
avoid
like,
paying
what
your
is that?
capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Correct.
You
Yes.
you buy it as a company and you avoid capital gains, and it's
Yeah.
so popular down in the state of Florida for anyone
Yeah.
that wants to do investments. And it's a super smart way to do it if you are not going to reside there.
Correct. Well, and you can even do it too. I mean, ultimately, when Trent and I sold our home in Arkansas, we had owned it for less than 2 years. So that means that we were going to have to ultimately pay capital gains tax on the money that we had made on the sale within that 10-month period. So with the reinvestment of that money, and strike me down if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it actually has to be in an LLC or trust
No,
capacity.
I don't think that it has to be. I think it has to
We
be.
could have actually still it has to be a likewise property. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. So if you're selling an income property, you need to use that money to buy a similar like property.
Yes,
In
yes,
our
but
personal
at least higher
situation, ours
value.
was a personal. Correct. Yes, ours
Right.
was a personal a home,
With
if
the
you will, in Florida.
intention to rent it.
Correct. But in my buyer's situation, they were selling an income property to purchase an income property. So
Got it.
it was what it was. We had looked at so many different types of condominiums. We're talking larger unit count buildings, 50 plus. We're talking boutique, what I would consider to be boutique condominium buildings with maybe 20 or less units.
Yeah.
Townhome style condominiums, um, traditional, what my Midwest brain processes as apartment
Yeah.
condominiums,
Yeah. Yeah.
Gulf side, Gulf Boulevard, East Side, West Side. I mean, we were all up and down these beaches looking at, there was at the time there was quite a few of them that were listed that met their criteria. So they kind of had their pick of the litter, if you will, as
Yeah.
well. But what I'm getting at is that ultimately the property that they really fell in love with, it was a smaller community. It has 6 units.
Oh,
That is
wow.
it. That
Wow.
is it. And it is on the intercoastal water, but where it goes narrow enough where it literally is a single file of buildings on the
Oh
intercoastal
my
Gulf
God.
Boulevard and
That
then the
falls under
building
the
and the
10
beach.
commandments of love thy neighbor.
And I was just, well, I'm just saying, like, it wasn't like it was 2 blocks back from Gulf Boulevard. It was like building, Gulf Boulevard, building, beach. You
Love
understand
thy
what I'm saying?
neighbor.
Where it gets real narrow. So there was a lot of factors to consider. Obviously, when you're buying into a condominium situation where there's less units in the building, your carry of the tab, if you will, is going to be
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
because you all have to afford that expenditure between just the you 6 bros,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Or brosifettes, whatever.
Right.
So I think I just made that up. I'm not sorry. I didn't mean to walk in anyone's TikTok shoes if I accidentally did. But so it was interesting though, because we had already had these discussions long before about the milestone inspections and why it was going to be important for me to find out that information out the gate, because it would be very interesting to them that they would look at one building that was very similar to the building next to it, but yet this one had had it done and its HOA monthly effects were
Totally
$900 a
different.
month. And the other one had not had the inspection done and it was $457 a month.
It is. It's insane how a block away, 300 feet away, can be a difference.
Well, and then again, they hadn't had the inspection done, so you were buying it at the price in which it was advertised because there was a level of unknown,
Yeah, uncertainty.
because you would have to then be the owner to incur when that actual engineering thing happened with the milestone. So anyway, this building was also special in the fact that literally as we were going under contract, they knew that that engineer was going to be out within the following next 2
Oh,
weeks.
wow.
So with that being said, we had negotiated all over a holiday weekend and we had gotten to the point where we had agreed upon all the other conditions
Yeah.
except for the fact that within the contract as the FAR bar in Florida, you have the right as the buyer to what's called your due diligence period,
Yeah.
or more commonly known as your inspection period. So during that time, that's when you ask for all the documentation that Stephanie mentioned earlier regarding with the condo docs, the declarations, the meeting minutes, the special assessments, all of it. We want to see all of it. We want to see everything to understand what we're going to take on as a new potential owner, along with obviously having the traditional home inspection done.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was I had to write almost I'm not going to say a never ending inspection period, but
Yeah. I mean, it
basically
really was.
an
An
open
addendum to
ended
the
inspection
inspection. Yeah.
period. Correct. That we agree that we will perform our own in unit inspection, the regular four
Totally.
point Joe Schmo inspection, all is well. We'll give you the results of that basically, or let you know if that's a condition within 7 days. But I had to write an extension basically. I don't know what the typical word would be because I had to consult with the higher ups within our company, which we're
Yeah.
lucky to have,
Yeah.
and the legal team. Um, of this open-ended inspection additional term that we would still have the right to walk away because we wanted that engineer to do what he had to do. God willing, it only went through phase 1 and didn't have to move forward. We not only wanted a copy of the report, but we wanted a copy of basically what the quote for the work that would have to be done to rectify the report.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a lot.
The complexity beyond that
Oh my God.
is,
Can you imagine if someone was trying to do this unrepresented or by some type of like robo dialer agent in
yeah.
EXP that has never set foot? I
Um,
can't even imagine.
well, and that just speaks to like the training that we have in the brokerage too. But I mean, the complexity of that transaction because, and then what will happen is that so you're now asking for an engineer report so that you can
Yeah.
go through this with a fine tooth comb,
Oh,
or
yeah.
have our legal team do that. Which this is where I feel like the consumer just says if we allow them, if as a realtor team, if we allow
Yeah.
them because there's a lot of realtors out there that will just they want the deal,
Right.
move forward with it. They'll say, "Well, if you really want it, it's going to cost you $200 because they do charge for that." And that's fair. It's a ton of copies. That's the one that I was giving the example before is a 188-page document that they would
Oh,
provide
yeah.
to them in the management company, or they could pay for it. And because we got in the meeting minutes, the buyer knew someone that worked that was on the board of the condo association and gave her a
Wow.
quick phone call and said, "What's up with this?" And they said, "It's literally like no big deal. It's actually best for us. It's all going to work in your favor. Take the deal." And it was and this was after 2 weeks of like going back and forth with
Right.
the buyer's agent. And I couldn't fault the buyer's agent for it because he was doing his job through the whole thing. And I actually,
Well,
at first I was annoyed, and then I was like, no, he's just trying to represent his clients. But the complexity that you just had to go through, Caitlin,
oh, yeah.
it's crazy.
This listing agent and I, okay, let's just put it this way. Like we were what I don't sorry, this is kind of a joke, but it's like I don't know about your phone, but my phone basically like it takes your call log and then it takes recents and almost moves it to the top like do you want to call this person again?
Yeah.
This listing agent
You
became
even
the
call
top
them
of my
again.
favorites
Call them again.
over my boss, over Trent, my fiance.
Yeah.
This listing agent was at the top of the if you're old enough to
Totally.
remember the MySpace 8, okay? He was at the very top and the amount of communication that was necessary. And then, not only to give another tip to our cap to our company, like I mentioned, these negotiations happened over a period of a little less than 72 hours. It was over a holiday weekend.
Of course it was.
He couldn't get a
Of
hold
course it was.
of he couldn't get a hold of a team member, he couldn't get a hold of a mentor, he couldn't get a hold of a broker, a fake broker, an out-of-state broker, his Sims World broker. He couldn't get a hold of anyone. So basically what it wound up coming down to was me getting on the phone with him and my broker.
Yeah. You're coaching them. You're literally like
Well,
coaching him and helping him
you
through this
know,
whole process because no one wants, as a buyer or as a seller, no one wants a legal situation where the person buying the property
well, yeah.
doesn't know.
Well, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm so confident like I knew exactly how this should be
Oh yeah.
handled.
Oh yeah.
Again, this was unknown territory. I had
Totally
dealt
new
with I
territory.
had dealt with transactions where it hadn't happened, the milestone inspection hadn't happened yet. I had dealt with transactions where it had already happened and we were negotiating said past special assessment, whether or not the seller would pay prior to closing or whether or not my buyer would incur the last monthly payments for special assessment. I had not been through where we're literally going under contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
We go under contract on Sunday, and that freaking engineer showed up on Tuesday, and everyone's holding their breath the entire few days that he was
Of
there
course,
because we're
everyone
just
is. Everyone is.
oh
Once
my
you go
god,
under contract, everyone is holding their breath. And I think that that's can be misconception from the seller to buyer that, oh,
oh
they
yeah,
don't care. They don't care. They're going to fall out of the deal.
everyone
Real
cares.
estate is so emotional. That is not the case. But the thing that keeps replaying in my head right now is like Ross yelling pivot. Like pivot.
Pivot,
Pivot.
yes, exactly.
Right? Like
Pivot, yes,
we are not going to pretend that we know how to handle every situation. But I
and this
will promise you that I will help you navigate through it and I will not abandon you through it, right? And that
No, and
you
we
will
have
be
the
a resource to
resources
help.
and
Yeah.
the backup and the tools
Yeah.
to get it figured out with you and for you.
Yeah.
I will say this, the agent on the other side of the deal, he was completely professional. I'm not going to say we did the best we could do because that sounds like it wasn't successful. We closed, everything went well,
Yeah.
everyone got what they wanted. It was, again, he was very professional. But it was
Yeah, it's that whole like trendy, well, two things. There's like one thing that's like this as is contract that is trendy right now that really
right.
doesn't protect the seller in a lot of ways, but it's become a
No,
trendy like as is. I'm only going to sell as is. And it's like, yeah, you don't really have any protection if you do that because there's so many different clauses as a buyer to get out of the deal. And
true.
then there's the whole like, calling a realtor and being like, I really want to do a deal with you. Well, do you? Like, do you know that realtor? Like, if things get really thick, do you really want to do a deal with that realtor? Because sometimes things
Well,
get hairy.
well, and let's also mention that that's not why we're here to play patty cake, right? We
Oh,
can all we right, and don't get me wrong, like a thank you or like a have a nice day that goes a long way because there's a lot of
right.
people. It's like whatever, and it's like give me
Or
something,
I'm not
man.
answering this right
So
now. I don't have time for
right,
this.
but
I'm
at the
so
same
stressed out.
time, especially in a single agency capacity, when you're able to represent that person in a single agency capacity versus a transaction broker, which is a whole nother episode we'll get
Totally another
into.
episode. Yeah.
But the type of representation in which you can offer to go out there and fight for your client, because I can't even tell you how many times that I have been in a single agency situation and the agent on the other side, I know for a fact that they're not allowed to function in that capacity and
Right.
they are a transaction broker. I've had to check them and say, I'm sorry, as a transaction broker, should you really be divulging that information?
Yeah. Yeah. You have a fiduciary
Bot,
responsibility.
right. A bot.
Exactly. And I mean, and it's hard to like, right, this is a totally different episode, but it's like
Yeah.
when we represent, there is like so many realtors out there. Our job is to help our buyer or help our seller, whoever we're representing. And although we may represent them as a transaction broker, or as people like say
Correct.
double sided or dual or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
because our brokerage does allow the single representation, it's
Yeah.
hard not to be trained that way always.
Mindset. Right.
To have that mindset that like I literally work for you. Like I
Yeah.
work for you and I'm most comfortable working for you. If I'm your if I'm representing you as the buyer, I'm going to do everything I can to help you and protect you. If I'm representing you as a seller, I'm going to do everything I can to get as much money as I can for you. It's hard to turn off those hats, but keeping the fiduciary responsibility in mind.
I've never had to take that more into serious consideration. I shouldn't even say consideration, but I've never had to be more mindful of that than in this particular transaction that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I totally understand that. I mean, that was an incredibly complex situation that you're
I
managing
think it
through.
came down to like a little over 1 week, like right before the closing date was supposed to be, that we were like, okay, we're gonna move forward.
Yeah,
Like
that's
it
that's
was
all.
just, it
That's
was,
all.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, it's just like I mean, you can equate it to some other big events in people's lives, like
Yeah.
you go to a wedding and the bride is going to tell you all these things that went wrong, but
Oh
you go to
yeah.
the wedding and
Right.
you're like, it's amazing.
It was amazing.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's no problem. Everything. What? What are you talking about? Like the flowers didn't come when you thought they would. All transactions are like that, and it
Yeah.
is okay. It's okay. Like, but that is why it's so important to hire people that even if they don't know right away, you know that they're going to work hard to find out the answers, or they're going to have the team to behind you. That situation that I told you about earlier. Not only was I a co-agent with someone with that, and so I had a sounding board at all times.
Right.
I originally was dealing with the wife with most of this transaction, but once it became a little bit more legal, the wife was like, I'm out. And I was dealing with the husband, and that's fine. I don't mind. They're the most adorable couple. But then I was dealing with the other agent, and I had to get to a place that we could work together because I needed to recognize his concerns, or else
Right.
he's going to just get frustrated with me and cancel. And then I had to work with a management company, and there was no reason to get angry with them. And then
Right.
I worked with Kathleen from the Sarasota office because she's a lawyer,
Right.
and like she was like, "What?" when like I filled her in, and she was awesome about it. And then honestly, like even Craig got involved in the whole thing because it was just, and then it all of a sudden, and this is why it became so funny is because like literally like we were supposed to close on that Friday, but on that Monday, I called the agent and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm trying to get. This is what I want to do. Like, I'm going to do. And he was like, honestly, Steph, we're good. I'm like, wait, what? What? Tap, 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 tap. Wait, what? Hit them like, what? And
I'm sorry, what?
he's like, when you provided those minutes, my client knew someone on the board and they just called them and said, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And they said it's actually just not a big deal, but it is. It becomes like where it's like, wait, it, but it, I, I would have seen it through. I would have managed the whole process, and those two sellers, I still talk to them all the time
Yeah.
because they're just so grateful about the experience that they went through.
Right.
I literally made it easy for them, even though our everyday dialogue was a lot, but I still try to make it as easy as possible, just like the complexity that you're just talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's not normal real estate. So we're giving a
No.
little bit of extremes, but there's always something in every transaction that's going to come
True.
up that it to be unrepresented is really, really, or to not have a representation that you can be honest with so that you feel like, I think it's almost like we were talking about in our meeting today that like you're going to hire a lawyer, you want that lawyer to work for you. It's the same difference with a real estate agent. And I
Right.
know that people feel like, okay, it's a real estate agent, like they do all these deals, they don't care. But that couldn't be further from the truth, at least in our brokerage.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I was gonna say we're super lucky because I feel like we come in educated, we come in encouraged, and we come in empowered because of the brokerage that we work for. So again, condominiums,
Yeah,
they don't have to be scary. When you
they're
work with
not at all.
someone who's knowledgeable about the recent changes in their governing
It's
and
such
you're
good
understanding
news.
where they're at with their process and how it can benefit you from the consumer level, transparency, it comes down to everything, but that level of transparency can only be achieved by the person that knows what it takes to remove the cloaking, if you will, and
Exactly.
provide
Yeah. I
that
mean,
for you
and
and know what to ask
actually,
for.
I've seen some consumers that want to choose single family
Yeah.
because of all those things, but the amount that they're spending per month
Right.
far exceeds, and the liability far exceeds what you would be receiving as a condo.
Right.
And what's also popular down here, which might be worthy of a podcast, is mobile homes. I mean,
True.
we see them on the news all the time, especially when there comes to hurricanes and stuff like that. But
Right.
I had two gentlemen that I met in December that chose a mobile home park, totally remodeled mobile home. It was beautiful inside. And I don't typically manage those, so I passed it off to a peer of mine, but they have no stake in the game because of
Right.
it. They have no stake. If something does happen, they have no stake in the game. All they did was basically buy a rental, and then they're paying monthly fees.
So they decided to purchase in a mobile home park that you do not own the land,
You don't
right?
own the
They
land, right? It's
so
not
they
land
pay
lease, right?
lot rent. Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just lot rent. And so in the event, because they wanted to be on the water, and in the event something happens, which basically means that they just, I wouldn't say it's Russian roulette, but I would basically say that they definitely like are playing a pretty tough game of poker.
Yeah.
And like they just want, and they chose a lovely, they chose a lovely, and we all make real estate decisions in life, and they wanted to travel, and that was where they wanted to put their money, and I actually loved that for them. But
Right.
this was back in April, because everything was just kind of coming down at that time. They were just so nervous about everything. They were just so nervous. And I just, as we have lived through it now through almost 8 months, I mean, it's been longer than that, but let's just say in 2024, 8 months of it,
Right.
I,
Right.
I feel more confident than ever with condos right now, that you as a buyer, as well as a consumer, or as a seller, you should feel like all legal responsibility will wash away. And as a buyer, you don't have to worry about, like, I don't know. I hope Betty Boop is doing a good job of running the
Running
situation.
this ship,
You
right?
remember, and the woman that you and I met, we'll just call her Jane for intensive purposes,
Jane,
a couple months
yes.
ago. She was
Yes.
furious with her board.
Oh,
Furious.
right. Yep.
She was furious with them. And
Yeah.
because she felt like they had no financial responsibility. And she's proving to be right. But they probably looked at her as that, like, crazy lady
Squeaky
that doesn't want
wheel.
to get on board with her.
She's a squeaky wheel. Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
and and you feel like that in certain communities. I have a 97-year-old man that doesn't feel like or 99 actually.
Oh, sorry. 99.
99. I've been actually talking to him for that long. 99-year-old man that wants to
That was a
sell.
good year, woman. That was a good year.
Exactly. Who wants to sell because he doesn't like the community, and it's like, dear God, like he just doesn't feel like that's the community for him, and that's okay. That is okay.
I love that for him.
Oh my God,
The fact that he's like, I'm
literally
over it. I'm 99 years old. I don't
there's
want to be
literally
here.
like zero chance of him ever watching this podcast. So I love Ray. I literally love him. I
Oh,
I love him. He got an iPhone, and he texts me because his daughter was like, I want you to text. So he texts me and he's like, hi, it's me, Ray. And so I talked to him last week. I'm like, Ray, what's going on? He's like, do you think I should sell yet? And I'm like, Ray, where are you gonna go?
where are you going? If he tells me van life, I'm going to just die. I'm going to say we need to pay for his social media. We need to pay for like a team of people to follow him. I love
So
that.
hysterical. And then I met with a couple earlier today that was looking at, only because this is just fun real estate right at this point. I met with a couple that was looking at a condo for their kid. And when I say kid, meaning he's retiring. So because
Oh,
we
sorry.
work in this 55 and plus community every day of our life, like literally
Right.
every day of our
True.
life.
Very
It's
true.
like we're just given that accreditation by just starting to be a realtor. And
God's way.
they came in, and they're looking, and his name is Fred. I'm coding that, but his name is Fred, let's just say. And he's like, they're from New York, which I'm lived in Connecticut for a
You're
long time. And he says, oh, I'm going over the business piece of it. And she's like, Fred, come over here and look at this. Look at this. Look at this over here. I want to show you. And he's like, I don't care, woman. I don't care, woman. It's so cute. It's so cute. It's so cute. So, but
See, they're the ones. They're the ones that are going to tell you that they've shared the same email address for 30 years,
30
and that they
years,
can't sign the dot loop.
if
Right?
they even
No.
have it, if they even have it, right? If they even have it.
No.
So but I don't know. We're
I
getting
don't know.
to
And you know what? No judgment, because when you threw out the 1992 figure earlier, my brain immediately went, "Oh yeah, 12 years ago." What?
right,
That's not real life.
right,
Not real life.
right.
Not real life.
Exactly, exactly. So, but I mean, in all intents, like it's all good stuff, and I think that you and I both believe that like condos are Florida, and we're going to continue to sell them over and over again, and we feel
It's gonna happen.
it is,
It's
and
gonna
we feel good.
happen.
I mean, I feel good about the condos in the future and everything with them.
Knowledge is power.
It is,
That's what we can bring it all back to. We can use, the fancy words of transparency, but knowledge is power. So if you guys have any questions regarding ownership with condominiums, or if you have any comments for what we've talked about here today, please feel free to join us on our socials. We always value your feedback. And of course,
yeah,
we are always also looking to, I'm not going to say battle royale, but we will also partake in conversations.
yeah. I mean,
So,
anything real estate, you and I can talk about all day long. So,
oh yeah,
I
we can
mean,
talk about
that's
it
just
all
all
day
we
long.
do, right? It's just like want to talk to people and
Yeah.
explain things to them so that everyone
I'm
feels
going to drive by no less than 37 condominium associations on my way home tonight, and that is
easily.
less than 3 miles,
It's
people.
crazy,
People.
and that's okay. It's just and it's just we are comfortable being uncomfortable. Just give us a call, and we will be more than happy to navigate or help you navigate through that process.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
don't be afraid of it because I assure you, it's all good. It's all good stuff.
Yes. All
So
right.
good.
Well, Stephanie, do you want to take us out tonight?
Yeah, awesome. So, super appreciate you guys joining in. This is a little bit more specific real estate tonight, but we felt like we want to make sure that we address some of the things that we feel are the buzz out there in the real estate world. And if you're uncomfortable with any of it, we always want to make sure that we make you comfortable with that. And uh, we're all about transparency and being honest and truthful and ensuring that we represent everyone in the right way. And sometimes these episodes are going to be lighthearted and talk about skincare or you know the fact that I got my hair done and it feels really fluffy right now. uh, and then sometimes we're going to be about condos, and
That's right.
we love that about this podcast. And if you have any questions, let us know, like and subscribe, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.